Compost doesn't usually fail loudly. It just sits there. No heat, no breakdown, no earthy smell. That was exactly what happened to mine. The pile looked fine on the surface, but weeks passed with no change. Scraps stayed recognizable. Moisture was right, and turning did nothing. The compost wasn't slow, it was stalled, and what finally restarted it wasn't more greens, more turning, or another expensive additive. It was a carefully measured, very intentional use of baking soda. Why compost sometimes goes dead instead of slow? A stalled compost pile is often blamed on carbon to nitrogen imbalance, but that's only part of the picture. Composting is a biological process, and biology shuts down when conditions drift outside a narrow comfort zone. One of the most common and overlooked issues is excess acidity. When food scraps, coffee grounds, citrus peels, or fermented materials dominate a pile, pH can quietly drop low enough to suppress microbial activity entirely. The warning signs that pH, not ingredients, is the problem. A compost pile with correct moisture and adequate nitrogen should heat within days. When it doesn't, and there's no strong ammonia smell, acidity is often the culprit. The pile smells sour instead of earthy. Worms avoid it. Fungal growth slows. Turning introduces oxygen, but nothing responds. This is when adding more greens actually makes things worse. Why baking soda works, but only in specific cases. Baking soda is sodium bicarbonate, a mild alkaline compound. Used improperly, it can harm soil and compost biology. Used sparingly, it can neutralize excess acidity, just enough to bring microbial activity back into range. This isn't about feeding compost, it's about correcting an invisible imbalance that's preventing life from functioning. So here's the exact mistake that many gardeners make when dealing with alkalinity. When compost starts to smell sour, a lot of folks tend to add wood ash or lime quite aggressively. Both of these are, really powerful and long-lasting. If you overshoot, you might swing the pile too alkaline and end up killing the activity all over again. Now, baking soda works because it's gentle and temporary. It buffers the pH without permanently altering the system when used correctly. Let me tell you about the precise amount that restarted my pile. The ratio really matters. I used 1 tablespoon of baking soda dissolved in 1 gallon of water and then applied it evenly over a compost pile, roughly 1 cubic meter in size. That's it. No sprinkling dry powder, no repeat dosing. The solution was poured lightly over the surface after turning, allowing it to move downward naturally. So what happened in the first 48 hours? Well, within a day, the sour smell faded away. Within 2 days, the pile warmed noticeably. By day 3, steam was visible after turning. Microbial activity didn't just resume, it actually accelerated. The pile hadn't needed more nitrogen, it needed a livable environment. So, let's dive into why this works biologically. Most compost microbes, you see, prefer a pH between 6.5 and 7.5. When the pH falls below that range, bacteria slow down dramatically, and fungi struggle to really take over. That's where baking soda comes in handy. It neutralizes those excess acids produced during anaerobic pockets or heavy fermentation. Once the pH rises just a bit, bacteria start multiplying, heat builds up, and decomposition restarts all on its own. Now let's talk about when baking soda should never be used. This method, isn't for healthy compost, garden soil, or worm bins. Sodium can accumulate over time and damage the structure if overused. Remember, baking soda is a corrective tool, not something you add routinely. If your compost is already active, heating up nicely, and has that earthy smell, it's best to just leave it alone. Alright, so how do you tell if your compost actually needs this fix? If your pile is still cold after 3 weeks, even with proper moisture, smells sour rather than rotten, and has lots of food waste or fermented material, acidity is likely the issue. A simple soil pH strip pressed into moist compost can confirm it. If the readings fall below 6, then a light correction might just do the trick. So right after you've applied the treatment, you should turn the pile once, and then, just leave it alone for at least 5 days. Turning it too soon can actually disrupt the microbes as they're trying to recover. It's important to let the heat build up naturally. If you notice activity picking up again, don't repeat the treatment. One application is usually enough. So here's why this really shouldn't replace good compost habits. Baking soda, it doesn't fix poor structure, dryness, or a lack of nitrogen. It only removes a barrier, that's all. Long-term compost health still depends on layered materials, airflow, and keeping that moisture balance just right. Honestly, you should think of this as restarting an engine, not fueling a road trip. The real lesson this stalled pile taught me is pretty interesting. Compost failure isn't always about what's missing. Sometimes it's about what's quietly out of balance. I've learned that small, precise corrections outperform big interventions when biology is involved. And understanding why something works matters way more than just copying it blindly. There's a final caution here that's worth remembering. If you find yourself needing this fix often, it's time to adjust your inputs instead. Try reducing acidic scraps, add more browns, and avoid over-fermentation. Compost should self-regulate most of the time, honestly. Once the pile restarted, it finished fast. It turned out dark, crumbly, and alive. Baking soda didn't save my compost by feeding it. It saved it by just getting out of the way of biology and letting life do what it does best.